Sir, this is a restricted installation. I need you to turn around and go back the way you came. The voice cut through the morning air like a blade, sharp, clipped, laced with the unearned confidence of youth. Petty Officer Second Class Damon Holt, Naval Special Warfare Command, stood with both hands resting loosely on his belt above the holster, feet shoulder-width apart, the posture of a man who had been told he was impressive and had never thought to question it. He was 26 years old, broad-shouldered in his duty uniform, and he had zero patience for the situation currently unfolding at Gate 4 of Naval Station Coronado. The situation was this: an old man with a cane. He was 84 years old, though nothing about him advertised it loudly. He stood just under 6 feet, slightly stooped by decades but not broken by them, wearing a faded canvas jacket the color of old pine needles over a gray work shirt, worn jeans with a crease ironed into them from what must have been long habit, and boots that had been resoled so many times the leather uppers were the only original part. His cane was plain wood, not decorative, not embellished, just a length of worn hickory that had taken on the oils and contours of the hand that held it. His hair was white and thin, combed neatly. His face was a map of everything that had happened to it, and a great deal had. His name was Walter Elias Creed. He had not moved when Holt spoke, had not flinched, had not shifted his weight. One hand rested on top of the hickory cane, the knuckles like polished stones, the skin mapped with the raised rivers and tributaries of a life lived with those hands in the world. He simply stood at the gate and waited, and his eyes, pale gray and slightly clouded at the edges the way winter ice gets near the shore, held Holt's gaze with the quiet, absolute steadiness of deep water. "You hear me?" Holt said, stepping forward. His partner, Petty Officer Martinez, leaned against the guardhouse wall behind him, watching with the casual attention of someone who had seen Holt run this particular performance before. "This is not a public entrance. You need credentials, prior authorization, or a sponsor on base to be standing at this gate. Do you have any of those things?" "I have an appointment," Walter said. His voice was low and unhurried, a gravel sound that came from somewhere deep, the way an old rock wall produces sound when it shifts. With the Command Master Chief, Holt's expression didn't change, but something in it sharpened. He turned back to the guardhouse, ran the name through the system, came back with the small private amusement of a man whose reading of a situation has been confirmed. "No appointment in the system, Mr. Creed. I'm going to need you to step back from the gate." "It may be logged under a different name," Walter said, without urgency. "If you could call his office directly, sir." Holt crossed his arms. 2 sailors had appeared at the guardhouse doorway, drawn by the sound of a prolonged exchange, and he was aware of them. His mockery was a performance, and like all performances, it required an audience. I don't know how to explain this more simply. This is Naval Special Warfare Command. It is not a place you accidentally wander up to with a cane and a nice story about the Master Chief. He paused for effect. "What exactly is it you think you are going to do here today?" Walter looked at him for a moment. Not the way a man looks at someone he is about to argue with. The way a man looks at a weather system moving predictably through its own cycle. "I was going to watch the qualification evolutions," Walter said. The Master Chief extended the invitation personally. "Watch the qualification evolutions." Holt turned and shared a look with the sailors at the door. One of them pressed his lips together against something trying to become a grin. "Sir, with the greatest respect, the Bud S observation is closed to the public, and even if it weren't, you." He gestured, an open-handed gesture that took in the cane and the canvas jacket and the 84-year-old entirety of Walter Creed, are not exactly the demographic that typically requests a ringside seat to a SEAL qualification evolution. He let that sit for a moment, then pushed further. The way a man pushes when the audience is watching and the performance is finding its gear. What was your specialty, Mr. Creed? Logistics? Filing requisitions? Martinez had stopped leaning against the wall. Logistics, Walter said, and the word carried nothing. No irony, no complaint, no deflection. Just the word, set down quietly the way you set something fragile on a table. Holt laughed. Not cruelly, or not with any awareness of the specific geometry of what he was doing. I respect your service, sir, but logistics doesn't get you through this gate without a verified appointment. He reached out and placed his hand on Walter's shoulder, not roughly, but with the confident, paternalistic firmness of a man guiding someone toward a direction they needed to go, his fingers closing on the old canvas jacket just below the shoulder seam. The world dissolved. The smell of the ocean vanished. The gate traffic and the morning sound ceased entirely. In the deep and complete silence that replaced them, the smell of salt and diesel gave way to something older and more complex. Canvas and sweat. The metallic edge of cold and damp. The distant copper of blood. The light was gray and flat and low. The light of a jungle before dawn with cloud cover pressing down through triple canopy so that the world existed in shades of nothing. He was 21 years old. He was lying prone in the mud on a hillside in a country with a name that felt, even then, like a wound in the mouth to say. Laos, technically. Though everyone who needed to know understood it wasn't really Laos. It was the war beside the war. The one that wasn't happening. The one that left no papers behind. The jungle pressed in from all sides with the indifference of a living organism. The triple canopy held the rain up in layers so that it didn't fall so much as seep, didn't rain so much as arrive, constant and cold and thorough. They called him Ghost. His team leader, Master Sergeant Leon Booth, a wiry man from rural Georgia with the eyes of something that had been through a refining fire and emerged reduced to its essential hardness, had given him the designation the second time he crossed the fence and came back without anyone, on either side, recording a sound. You are a ghost, kid, the kind that comes back. It had felt less like a nickname than a condition. To his left in the mud, perfectly still, Booth. To his right, in the dark he could sense rather than see Torres, Wachowski, and the other Walter, Watkins, whom they called Ink on account of the elaborate tattoo sleeve he planned to finish when they got home. Watkins was not going to finish the tattoo. Walter did not know this yet. What Walter knew at this particular moment was the wind. It was a bad wind for what he needed to do. It came from the north and said it was going north. But in the depression below the ridgeline it bent, carrying a different direction entirely, and that second wind was the one that mattered. He lay with his cheek against the worn wooden stock of a rifle that had come to him from Booth, who had received it from a master sergeant who had carried it at Chosin Reservoir in 1950 and pressed it into the hands of a 20-year-old Leon Booth in 1965 with the words, "This rifle keeps its promises. You keep yours." The rifle was old. It had no place in the modern tactical vocabulary. It did not care. Walter watched a single leaf on a low branch at the edge of the clearing below, not the trees at the ridgeline. The leaf. One trembling thing at the edge of the depression where the false wind ended and the true wind began. He had been watching it for 23 minutes. He made the shot. 3 hours later, as dawn broke gray and savage over the valley, Watkins took a fragment, clean, nearly invisible, the kind that produces a wound so specific and so internal that by the time you understand what has happened, you are already past the place where understanding helps. He was alive when Walter reached him. For 11 minutes, he remained alive. Then, he was not. Booth knelt across from Walter in the rain and pressed something into his palm. A unit insignia pin, small, worn, the paint almost completely gone from long handling, passed down through a chain of hands that had all disappeared into the history of a war that was officially not happening. "Make it home, Ghost." His voice was flat and precise, the way a man speaks when he is using flatness as a container for something otherwise too large to manage. "The others are all watching. Make it home." The memory left him all at once, replaced by the present with a completeness that always required a half-second of adjustment. The gate. San Diego. Salt air and diesel. Holt's hand on his shoulder, still there. Walter did not move. His expression had not changed. Martinez had stopped leaning against the wall the moment the hand made contact. He was 22 years old and from Laredo, and his grandmother was 81 with a bad hip. And there was something about the angle of Holt's gesture, the way the old man had absorbed it, the way deep water absorbs a thrown stone, that landed in a specific place in his chest and stayed. He watched Holt continue talking. Something about a visitor center on the north side of the base. And he watched the old man listen with the patience of a man who has waited out much more than this. He looked at the small pin on the old man's jacket collar. Worn, almost no paint left. He didn't know what it was. He knew he didn't know. He also knew that not knowing didn't mean nothing. "Holt," he said. "Need to use the head for a minute." He walked into the guardhouse before Holt could respond, moved past the sailors in the doorway, and picked up the duty phone. There was a number, not admin, not the standard line, but a number the outgoing watch had written on a card taped inside the phone housing with the words, "If something feels wrong and you don't know why, call this." He had read it on his first day and assumed he would never use it. He dialed. The phone rang twice. A voice answered, professional, unhurried. Martinez kept his voice low. "This is Gate 4 duty. I have a situation. An old gentleman in civilian clothes, cane, no appointment in the system, claims an invitation from Command Master Chief Stroud to observe today's evolutions. His name is Creed, Walter Creed." The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. It stretched for 4 seconds. 5. No background sound. No shuffling. Simply the clean silence of a line that had gone completely still, the way a room goes still when something lands in it that changes the weight of the air. When the voice returned, it was different, stripped of everything unnecessary. "Say the name again." "Walter Creed. Location, Gate 4. Do not let anyone touch him." The urgency in it reached Martinez in his sternum. "You understand me? Keep him comfortable and keep him there. Help is coming." A pause. Then, at a remove, the sharp, purposeful sound of someone issuing a command to a room. The line went dead. Martinez set down the phone and walked back to the door. Outside, Holt was still talking. Walter was listening with the patience of a man who has learned, over a long time, not to spend energy on impatience. His eyes had gone to some middle distance, not absent, simply resting. Martinez came back to his position against the wall and stood there, holding the specific knowledge of what was coming, watching Holt run the performance to its natural conclusion. Holt was not a bad person. Martinez understood this with the clarity that sometimes arrives at 22 when you are watching something unfold and cannot stop it. Holt was technically skilled, disciplined, committed to his duty. He simply could not see what was standing in front of him. He was looking at a cane and a canvas jacket and 84 years of living, and the numbers added up to one thing in his mind, and nothing in his training had given him the mechanism to imagine they could add up to something else. The sound of engines reached them before anything else, not a single vehicle but multiple. The synchronized low growl of machines moving with coordinated purpose, building from nothing to something to significant in about 30 seconds. Then the short commanding bursts of official vehicle horns clearing a path. Holt turned. Martinez had already turned. 3 Navy command vehicles came around the service road at a pace that was fast, without being reckless. They stopped with precision, and the doors opened before the vehicles had fully settled, and the men who emerged moved with the quiet, chilling economy of motion that comes from doing important things in high-pressure environments for a very long time. Command Master Chief Raymond Stroud of Naval Special Warfare Command was compact and weathered with a face suggesting it had been put to significant use across 31 years, 6 major theaters, and a classified operational record that filled more space in its redacted summary than most people's full careers. He wore his dress uniform, the ribbons, the careful press, the full weight of his service visible and deliberate, and this detail registered on Holt and the sailors at the doorway before any of the other data did. Stroud did not look at Holt. His eyes moved through Gate 4 with the efficiency of a man who has entered 1,000 rooms under pressure, and they found Walter Creed immediately, and he walked directly to him. Holt's hand froze in the half gesture it had been making when the engines announced themselves. It stayed there, suspended, for 2 full seconds before he lowered it. Stroud stopped in front of Walter Creed. He looked at the old man, the canvas jacket, the hickory cane, the pale gray eyes that had not changed and had not widened, and had not done anything at all in response to the arrival, except, perhaps very slightly, warm. Stroud came to attention. And then he brought his hand up in the sharpest, most breathtakingly precise salute that Petty Officer Second Class Damon Holt had ever seen in his life. A salute that was not a formality, not a performance, but a complete and serious thing, held in the still morning air, directed at the old man in the worn jeans and the pine-colored jacket who held a hickory cane and had been standing at this gate for 12 minutes. The salute held. 1 second. 2, 3. The sailors at the guardhouse door had gone absolutely silent. Martinez made no sound. Holt's jaw was fractionally open. Walter Creed returned the salute, a smaller motion, abbreviated by the years, but correct, the angle and the intention exactly right. "Welcome back to Coronado, sir," Stroud said, and his voice carried across the silence like a correction, quiet and precise and final. "I apologize for the confusion at the gate." His eyes went to Holt for exactly 1 second. 1 second was sufficient. Then his attention returned entirely to Walter. He turned to Holt directly. Petty Officer Holt. His voice had the measured weight of something being placed on record. "This man's name is Walter Elias Creed. In November of 1971, he completed a classified direct action mission in the Laotian Corridor, operating under MACSOG, that recovered 3 downed airmen and resulted in the confirmed elimination of an enemy command cell that had been operating against coalition forces for 14 months. He was 21 years old. Stroud did not raise his voice. He did not need to. He was awarded the Navy Cross, 2 Bronze Stars with Valor Device, and the Purple Heart. In 1974, he completed the original Naval Special Warfare Qualification Assessment that preceded the modern BUD-S program, first in his class. He then served as instructor cadre for 9 years, during which time he helped design and codify portions of the qualification standard that the candidates training on this installation today are still tested against. A pause. The unit he served with had an operational designation. Ghost 6. It was a 6-man direct action element with a kill-capture record classified until 2019. Stroud looked at Holt with the complete, unblinking attention of a man delivering something that needed to be received without modification. The enemy had their own name for them: Bong Ma-Su, the sixth ghost. Because when this man and his team were operating in your area, you did not hear them, and you did not see them. And the first indication they had been there was that problems which existed in the morning did not exist in the afternoon. He stopped. The morning air moved between them. The pin on his collar is the original unit insignia. It was given to him by Master Sergeant Leon Booth at a location still classified, under circumstances that resulted in Master Sergeant Booth's posthumous Medal of Honor. Stroud held Holt's gaze. You placed your hand on his shoulder. Holt said nothing. I'm not going to formally process this, Stroud said. That decision I am making once, this morning, and it will not be repeated if anything like this happens again at any gate on this installation. What I am going to do is ensure you spend the next 30 days reading the operational records of the men whose work made this community possible. Every unclassified account you are cleared to read. A written summary of each. Before those 30 days are done, you will understand what you are actually guarding when you stand at that gate. He paused. Dismissed. Holt stepped back. His face had passed through several phases and arrived at something that was not shame exactly. Shame moves fast and hot, but its older, quieter sibling, the specific lasting discomfort of having been genuinely wrong about something that mattered. Walter Creed had watched all of this from the same position he had occupied for the entirety of the morning. When Holt turned to go, Walter said, "Quietly, son." Holt turned. Walter stepped toward him and placed his free hand on Holt's shoulder, the same gesture, inverted. He held it there for a moment, and Holt looked at the hand and then at Walter's face, and something in the morning went very still. You're exactly what this place needs at that gate, Walter said. His voice was the low gravel sound, the sound that came from somewhere permanent. The fire, the certainty. Don't lose it. He paused. But the day you realize that the most dangerous thing you'll ever face might not look dangerous, that's the day you become hard to kill. The old things that have been through the fire don't need to announce themselves. They're already what they are. He turned back to Stroud. I'd very much like to watch these boys train, Raymond. Stroud almost smiled. Yes, sir. 6 weeks later, in a hardware store on the east side of Coronado, a young man in civilian clothes stood in the fastener's aisle holding a bolt he didn't need, working up something he hadn't needed to work up in a long time. He was thinner than he had been. The swagger was gone, replaced by a quieter posture. The posture of someone who has been disassembled and is in the process of being rebuilt. He turned the corner and stopped. Walter Creed was examining a display of wood stain with the patient, methodical attention of a man with a project and time to do it properly. His cane was hooked over the edge of the shelf. Holt stood there for a moment. Then he walked over. "Mr. Creed," he said, "I owe you an apology, a real one, not an official one. What I did at that gate," he stopped, organized himself. "I looked right at you and I didn't see you, and I'm sorry." Walter studied him for a long moment. Then he reached out, picked up a can of wood stain, turned it over, set it back down. "Accepted," he said simply. He picked up a second can and held it out. "You know anything about finishing cedar?" Holt took the can. "Not much." "Then walk with me for a minute," Walter said. He unhooked his cane and started down the aisle, unhurried, the hickory tapping softly against the concrete floor. "I'll tell you what I know. There are men walking among us today who have seen things that changed the world and returned to live quietly in it. carrying what they carry without complaint, asking nothing more than to be seen, not for what they were, but for what they still are. Quiet men with hickory canes and worn canvas jackets and eyes the color of old ice over deep water. The world moves loudly around them. They do not raise their voice above it. They don't have to. If you were moved by Walter's story of quiet courage and timeless wisdom, hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to see it, and be sure to subscribe to Veterans Valor for more stories of America's unassuming heroes.